8% voter turnout, and Coventry is dealing with that mess.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
You know, if I had a quarter for every voter I've ever met in my professional career who came to some understanding about a public policy or elected government decision after it was made, having said, "I wish you had told me," I'd be a rich man. I've been covering municipal government since a wee lad, and I think you can probably tell I am no longer a wee lad. But the dynamic never changes. Great to have you in on this Friday evening. You know, on Fridays we try to expand the conversation on a single issue, and timing is such that it's very fluid in Coventry right now. This is not just a Coventry, Rhode Island conversation. Anytime we drill down on a municipal issue, it has tentacles, ramifications, common ground with many other communities in the state. Although this one has its own special nuances. We'll have a school committee member from that town and one of the chief town criers on this, who's spent his own money advertising and trying to get the people to see this thing in a particular way. He, at least for the time being, I think has been successful. His headline from the other day, we talked about this, the people in Coventry rejected the proposed budget. This is a new nuance in Coventry where the people in an all-day referendum, as they like to call it, weigh in, and only 8% of the electorate actually turned out. But that 8% turned it down 2-1. The superintendent was frustrated, issued amongst his many opinions and remarks on this, a formal move to lay off 350 teachers. Now, if it's reported that 350 teachers in Coventry are going to be laid off, that would be poor journalism. There is no chance that that's going to happen. But in this state, you have to notify everybody that there's a chance that they're going to be laid off. And so there'll be callbacks out the wazoo, but there could be dozens of teachers who are let go in this situation because reportedly they're at least a couple of $1 million short in their operating budget if they have to be level funded from the previous year, meaning if they don't approve the new budget, the people, they stay with the old budget. Well, escalating costs and all that kind of stuff has this thing in a real tight squeeze. What else do we have in terms of a headline? Oh yes, the town council last night weighed in. Of course, in our completely inefficient and backward way of governing in this state, school committees and councils kind of operate separately. Although they say in Coventry, the irony is that there was symbiotic relationship between the committee and the council this time around, except it didn't transfer. Here's what Eyewitness News did to cover last night's last episode.
It was hard to find a spot at Wednesday's Coventry town meeting.
We wanted that budget. It's the taxpayers that voted this budget down. We're not the enemy here. We tried to present a budget.
Even the overflow room was full where people watched a live stream.
If they had known and they'd voted, they would have voted yes.
The town council's question, where was all the interest the first time around? Town council president Carrie McGee mentioned how only 8% of voters weighed in on the budget. That failed. At the meeting, there were 2 new potential town budgets being presented.
Why did no one come to my door and ring my doorbell to discuss the urgency of how important it was to pass this budget?
Several people spoke up saying it wasn't clear what was at stake when they voted, arguing that if more people did know, they would have preferred the initial budget over what's being proposed now. Kimberly Shockley says the new budget may come with less taxes, but the consequences, like cutting school programs and teachers, is much worse.
I'm saying that as taxpayers, if I were given the choice on what to vote for next, it would be the budget I voted on last week.
It's mandated by the town charter that we come back with a different modified budget in the event that a budget is not passed on the first attempt.
I don't know how many bites at the apple you get in Coventry here. Luke Murray is a school committeeman, a freshman versus everybody else, correct?
I am, yes.
Welcome, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Overall impression of your current crisis?
Frustration overall, because I know that we've had a lot of the meetings. We tried to inform the public beforehand. We tried not to use scare tactics. We did have a symbiotic relationship with the council, and I think we put forward an honest budget. I know there's a trust deficit because I've been a resident of the town pretty much all my life, and I know there's reasons for that. As you know, we had a fire district problem. We have a ongoing sewer problem. We've had some money shifts that have occurred in the past that, quite frankly, people have called into question. And I get that. That's part of the larger narrative that is now there. But it doesn't solve our current situation. We need to figure out how we move forward from that. I think we've gone major steps forward. We had a finance director. We didn't have a finance director last year. We had a town manager vacancy, which we have an interim. We have filled the finance director's spot. On the school side, we have a very competent finance director. I think the superintendent's doing the right thing. They've presented a reasonable budget, a fair budget, and what they actually laid it out in line item format more than they ever have. But it's the education factor. We have to do a better job on the council and school committee side to get the word out.
Well, we'll talk about the word and the selling of the concepts and who's winning that battle momentarily when we bring out our next guest. But sure. the mechanics of this whole thing in Coventry, with the new form of operating, if the people don't ratify, meaning vote yes on the budget that is put out, the existing budget stays in place, correct?
As of July 1st, if we do not ratify a new budget, and right now the time frame is, we're looking at June 20th, I think, for a possible next vote on this, another crack at the apple. After that, if that gets voted down, we go back to last year's budget on a divided by 12, which means that we are basically level funded.
What is the nature of having another crack at the apple? You have an all-day referendum, and then you can say, all right, one more try. How many times are you allowed to go out and have this election from the people?
Well, to my understanding, we can continue to go out. The question is, if we come out and this is what occurred last night, some people wanted to just submit it again, as is. We know now what the value judgment would be. Let's put it back on the table. The issue with that is if it is voted down again, we run into not only the cost of the financial town meeting, which is estimated at $20,000, but what's the end result? If they've rejected it again, chances are they're going to level fund it anyway. So we're in a tight predicament. We as a school committee, which is, as a member I have to focus on, we have to prepare for the worst, which is those 350 layoff notices that went out, and we have a vote tonight on that. We have to have enough flexibility because, as you know, on a job fair, it's a domino effect on how you deal with this.
Sure. All right. Timing-wise, by the way, you should know, and many of you do know, our Friday night programs are taped on Thursday afternoons. The Coventry situation is very fluid because, as we discussed this on Thursday afternoon for your Friday night viewing, there's been one more meeting last night, meaning tonight for us as we're speaking. You have a decision to make on the school committee side to formalize that which is the not necessarily the contingent plan, but current plan to respond to the no vote of the people, correct?
Right.
And the superintendent is, working on that right now and is proffered things like, if I understand it correctly, like half days for the kids in high school and extracurricular down the turlet and sports unfunded and all that kind of a thing.
Yeah, this is
not something we haven't heard before from town to town to town to town. And I think a lot of people think that's yelling fire, well, it's not fire and credit theater, but more or less, boy who cried wolf type of stuff. People don't necessarily buy that that's going to happen. So talk to me about that real quick.
That goes into the trust thing, right?
Right.
We have to do our job, and that means, at this point, maintaining flexibility. Are we crying wolf on this? Absolutely not. If you look at our budget, we're already tight. Last year, we laid off 21.5 full-time employees, full-time equivalents. We made concessions last year. Unfortunately, as you know, many people get selective amnesia after the budget cycle goes away. So we come back into another tough budget year. We have no place to cut. And so now this year, we're looking at this budget, and we're going to have to make some draconian cuts if we get level funding.
And you're in a current new contract with the teachers. It's 1 year old?
Approximately, yes.
Did you vote on this one?
I did not. I was a new member as of March.
So you were talking to me yesterday on the radio on WPRO weekdays 3 to 6 to the numbers there, 2.5%-ish.
2.25, 2, I believe.
Look, somebody called me on the program and pointed something out, which I thought was interesting. That in Coventry, this deal also increased the step level. So it's not just a 2.5, whatever. The multiples are extremely high in terms of some of the teachers, the veteran teachers, are getting $18,000 raises as opposed to what the 2% would be on their base because their steps are increasing and the percentage is the overall group. Are you being clear and or fair with the articulation of what the New Deal has done for these teachers?
I think for the common person not familiar with union contracts, no, we're not. I think we need to do a better job of articulating that. The truth is that we do have many top step teachers. They've been there for a while, and as you know, that relates into the pension, right? People are working longer, they get to that top step, so their only increase is that percent of what we give them, that 2.5% or 2%.
But as the teachers who are moving through steps, they're getting much bigger
larger
chunks than
jumps.
2%.
And that does need to be conveyed more. And I do think, you know, if moving forward, we need to have that hard discussion of whether we can afford this in the contracts. And I'm willing to open up that discussion with the community. But at this point in time, we cannot have that discussion.
You have an acute problem now.
We have an acute problem.
All right, when we come back, we'll be joined by a citizen activist who's well known in town, and he spent his own dough to, I don't know, force the issue. Stay with us. So joining School Committeeman Luke Murray here in the studio is John Assalone, who is a veteran resident of Coventry, I'm told, and a real estate developer of some prominence. John, welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you very much.
You threw some ads up. Can we throw ads 1 and 2 up just so we can see? These are some of I don't think we have to go into the details on screen, but these are the kinds of things that Coventry taxpayers were seeing in the local weeklies prior to this vote. Informational, no doubt, and you know, some spin as I look at them, but you know, it's interesting. You point out that you had no opinion specifically on the vote, but you loaded up some pretty important information there. So clearly you had an impact on this race, correct?
Clearly the people did not have this information because they're not interested in their meetings because it always comes out the same way.
Meaning
the school committee always wants to pass it on. Not this gentleman, he's a really nice guy. I met him outside, so I don't want to attack him, and I'm not going to. But same situation, you know it. Well, it was the other people, we're going to fix it. So they have unsustainable budgets. They blame it on well, it's happened in the past.
What's
Coventry,
happened in the past?
well, Coventry is in a perfect storm right now. They changed the financial town meeting structure. So people in the past could vote on the town's budget and the school's budget. They can't do that now. That upset a lot of people. And it's the sewer situation.
I mean, they used to be independently independently voted upon. Is that right?
So we had a participatory financial town meeting.
Right.
So people could come make modifications to the budget line items, but very few people would show up.
Yeah.
We've had some years where, and John can attest to this, 150 to 300 people would vote on the entire town budget. So, which is an entirely separate issue. The process is a process at this point, right? We have to work it within that framework. It's our job as a school committee and town council to figure out how we find a sustainable path forward. What I don't want to happen is the narrative's already out there, and you know, with tuitions and the money follows the child. People don't understand that, and if the narrative is that Coventry schools are spiraling downward, forget about it's an economic equation. We are going to spiral down economically because kids will tuition out, and we'll have less kids tuitioning in.
All right. What's the word on this? What feedback did you get from your advertising effort, John? Did you? I'm guessing with a low voter turnout of 8% that the 2-to-1 response was in part your message that said, "Hey, listen, here are the numbers, and if the vote is no, everything remains the same." And people say, "Well, that's not the worst thing in the world, so okay, I'll just vote no." But clearly, I mean, I'm no dummy. Clearly, your effort was to create a no response in this election. Yes?
My effort was to inform people that things they didn't hear about, because they don't go to all the meetings. They feel that many times it's useless. The school committee is run by the Coventry Teachers Alliance. People did not know there's a $2 million salary increase this year, a $2 million salary increase next year.
Yeah, based on the package.
A $1.5 million next year. And they're getting a bit fed up because it always happens. So you go to a school committee meeting, if you make suggestions in the past, they don't listen to you. You know, a lot of their funding comes from the Teachers Alliance, so I wanted to put it out there.
Is your committee infiltrated by the union?
I don't know where that statement's coming from, because I received zero. Actually, I've donated more to the scholarship fund than anything. But There is no alliance there.
What about your fellow brethren? There's 4 other school committee members. Do they have relationships
They've
with
been
the
on
union?
longer, but you know, of course we have relationships because
Spouses,
we
blah,
talk.
blah, blah, da-da-da.
There's going to be friends, relationships, whatever between there. It's Rhode
So why are
Island.
you suggesting the committee is kind of poisoned by the
Well,
union?
it's a combination of donations, is a combination of who's going to vote for who you should vote for. I've been there for a lot of years. I was part of it for a lot of years. I hope people participate in these votes with real information. Last night they had a lot of information. Okay, are they going to buy it? I think it's questionable. I think, you know, I've been here a long time. I love Coventry. And I mentioned before when this gentleman said I put kids into school. My last 500 homes, 0.005 kids in school, millions of dollars in taxes to the community.
Meaning you're building primarily for an elderly population?
No, no, affordable homes, but not affordable housing. These are people have real mortgages. Okay,
Yep.
so these people are sitting there with no services as such, recreational, police protection, saying, what am I paying all this money for?
Well,
not only them,
are
the
you
community.
Adding, are you adding? Listen, I think the school committee member is pretty pragmatic about some of the challenges that we have in terms of disclosure, some fiscal discipline, all those things. But right now, well, you know what? It's interesting because right now you guys are in somewhat of a crisis mode, and because if this budget does not pass, or if this budget remains as is, it seems to me that these cuts are real and affect quality of life now for families in Coventry. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
Clearly. All right, when we come back, I want to know what John's response is to that, and school committee members as well. Stay with us, please. So there's a follow-up ad that Mr. Assalone put into publication where he shares his thoughts, some of which you're going to hear right here. But the bottom thought is, do not blame this one on the taxpayers. I'm not exactly sure who you're talking to. The taxpayers are reading this thing. So it's the travails of government. It's the history of what you think is not productive governing. It's the high expenses. It's this, it's that. It's all of those things. But tell me for now how you rationalize the acute problem that is now bestowed on the people of Coventry. And those folks who came rushing to a meeting last night, all panicked that school services, extracurricular teams, teaching specialty, all that kind of stuff are hanging in the balance. How do you reconcile that as a guy who's riled up folks in town?
Riled up. I mean, if
Advertising riles people up.
Fine,
We don't have to argue about that.
because information was not coming out.
Which information?
Information of the increases, or information that their own budget director tells them that at that rate it's not sustainable.
Which budget director about what rate
We
where?
have a finance director in the school department. And she would tell you, and I'm sure she told them, that the increases that have been coming to Coventry from the school department.
Meaning what? The collective bargaining agreement and the like?
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you been warned by the budget director that you're teetering?
No, and this is the thing. That contract was ratified by the council.
So what?
It was in a public process. Everybody knew that there was going to be the $2 million increase.
Right.
I get it. You know, I sense that frustration too, but this has not been a closed loop on this. People knew.
There's no lock on the door in the local government operations. The people can. This is an age-old conversation and debate.
But
the public's right to know versus the public's interest in knowing are two very different
how about
things.
knowing for a $73 million budget, we have a C+ rating, okay, in Coventry. $73 million budget. 3/4 of the budget is for the schools. It doesn't change.
That's not unusual from town to town.
But
It's a 5 or 10%.
It should be number one.
The $73 million is, look across. As you know, we get state aid. That varies with income. We talked about median income. This was a question that came up, and I thought it was irrelevant. I guess it is relevant because they base your state aid partially on your median income. Coventry lists higher than I think it should, and we agree on that. But we don't get the state aid that other communities do. So when you say a budget is $51 million, that may not
That's a
reflect
really
the
good
state
point.
aid.
We have a governance problem from top to bottom in this state. The state education formula is all screwed up.
Absolutely.
The property tax systems are all screwed up. The car tax systems are all screwed up. Most folks don't even really know what the idiosyncrasies are from town to town about how that whole thing works.
My concern,
access to local meetings is available to everybody. You're not suggesting that the town council or school committee hid data in their discourse, correct?
I'm sorry, they did what?
That they hid the numbers, that they...
No, what they did though, to try and make it easier and a bit someplace, when they changed the structure of the financial town meeting, this came back to haunt them as I predicted it would. Now last time it went one way. In a couple of weeks in June, it may go another way. Nobody knows. Okay, that's
Well, that's their governance model. This is something you're going to have to work out.
Yeah.
It seems to me.
Either way, it would have had to be worked
So,
out.
what, John? I guess here's my question for you.
yeah.
What's your next ad going to say when, over this process, over the next few nights, they decide to post another vote, say for late June? What's your next ad going to say? Thank God everybody came out and they're more informed. Good luck, and if you want schools, vote yes. What are you going to? What influence are you going to have over a constituency you no doubt have affected?
I don't know yet, and I have a real concern for the kids. But I have a concern that I think sometimes the public has to stand up and take a position and not listen to, we tried our best, the other people did it. Because I'm really tired of hearing that. My true concern is for the kids, so I don't know how I'm going to vote on the final budget.
Now, how are you going to advertise? Because you like to advertise your point of view. What are you going to say?
I don't know.
Well, you
yet.
must
It's
let me know when you decide.
I was informed last evening. That was a really some great information that came out. Some great. No, I don't think you're going to see all those
Specifically
layoffs.
what?
Oh, the layoffs that might come out.
Were you you're not an uninformed citizen. Were you unaware that was the case?
The number
Yeah.
and the facilities for public recreation.
Yeah.
That would be wiped out.
Yeah.
That was not out there.
And in fairness, Mr. Asselone,
I'm concerned about. I really am concerned about the kids. But when do you take a stand that enough is enough?
Yeah. Sometimes Manasel not going to take it anymore is not constructive in the moment. We'll see. Last word.
well, in fairness, Mr. Asselone, we didn't want to present this draconian option out there before the vote, and maybe that we should have. But the superintendent was clear on what cuts could happen, and moving forward, I would hope, and I take my position seriously. I'm trying to earn that trust back, and I understand that point of view. But we have to take this step forward. The trust is being built with the town. We know we have work to do, but I guess my last word as a plea to the town is, don't cut off your nose to spite your face, sort of deal. Let's try to find a path forward and be educated. And I'm hoping this rallies us. We have a great school system.
And I would like both of you to come back, both here and on the radio, as you formulate your thoughts and your advertising plan, and you try to figure out how to work out of this mess. But you're both gentlemen. I appreciate you
thank you for
coming.
your time.
You bet.
Thank you.
I appreciate you coming in. Final word when we come back. Hey, listen, the only thing that bothers me about this situation in Coventry, how much time do I have here, by the way? About 25 seconds, I'm told, is the 8% turnout. And then people come rushing to a town meeting in Coventry saying, oh, I didn't know. Got to tell you, man, this notion that you didn't know doesn't fly. Get engaged before the you-know-what hits the fan. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. We'll see you on Tuesday with a new show with the House Speaker. Good night.